Hey, Bree, thanks for coming in today. I'm so excited to hear about your story and your role with APM. But to start with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what your age is and what you do at APM?
Yeah, so my name is Bree. I am 25 and I work as an employment consultant at APM.
And where do you live?
Newcastle.
Up in Newcastle. So I know so many people that live in Newcastle, right? Seems like everyone I talk to lives in Newcastle. Mm-hmm. It's a huge population there. What's it like living there?
It's a big change from Sydney. So I moved from the Blue Mountains up there about 2 years ago now. And honestly, the culture shock was so different. It was like living in Gold Coast. And I was like, what? This is like 2 hours from Sydney? Like, this is crazy. The best thing that I love about it is that your worst day of traffic is like your lightest traffic in Sydney.
How long have you been living up in Newcastle for?
So it'll be 2 years in December this year. But yeah, I've been loving it so far. It's been a different view for us, but we love it nonetheless.
So you go from Newcastle across to Mudgee every weekend?
Most weekends.
And spend time at your farm. So that's how you usually spend your weekends?
Absolutely.
And a lot of your downtime's at the farm?
It is, yeah.
And does your farm produce anything, or is it a nice big block of land with a lot of trees?
It's just a little Airbnb farm at the moment. Like, it's got like a little cottage on it. We have like a river down the back. We do have some sheep on there and occasionally some chickens. But at the moment it's pretty quiet. A lot of people go and stay there to go see the wineries, but when it's not booked out, we're like there.
I'd be very selective on who I told if I had a farm out in Mudgee that was an Airbnb.
I know.
You've just announced it publicly.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, it's such a beautiful place to be. But when we go up there, we're there for the weekend, just put the fire on. We've got a spa and a pool.
Oh,
we've got
nice.
some dirt bikes. Yeah, it's awesome.
So you sound incredibly outdoorsy.
I am.
Sounds like you just love being outdoors and experiencing that. Is that what your hobbies are, just spending time outdoors?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, it's funny because I work in, obviously, APM in an office. I'm usually wearing something nice and everyone's like, oh, you're not like a city girl. I'm like, nope.
So it sounds like you moved around quite a bit. You didn't grow up in the Blue Mountains?
No. So I grew up in Brower with mum and stepdad. And then when I turned 18 and finished school, I was like, I want to get out of here, go explore a little bit. Only moved to Kellyville or like Western Sydney. Went to uni there for a little bit and then met my partner. And we moved to the Blue Mountains together. And then he got offered a job with his best friends to work in Newcastle, and they were moving up there. So we were like, why not? We'll take the chance and go for it.
Tell me, what was it like to grow up in Barara? Because Barara, it's on the upper North Shore. It's a very, very quiet area to grow up in.
Yeah.
There's no traffic around Barara as well. There still isn't. But what was it like to grow up there?
It was actually really, really nice. Most of my childhood was spent, like, obviously our house backed onto bushland, and that's all I did growing up was go on like little explores down the bushland, find caves, build whatever I could find with my hands. Like, I was always, every afternoon, me and my siblings and all the neighbours on the street would always go down to this one cave. And we were always doing something different.
And it's my understanding that you were 4 years old when you acquired your disability. Do you have any memories around that time?
No, not really. So I just remember not being able to hear much, and obviously love my mum. She's the best mum in the world, but she just thought I was a really naughty kid.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, like, this kid's not listening to me. What is happening? Like, she's just so naughty. But then, like, the footy was on the TV and it was on mute, and I lip read what the footy player said, and my mum was like, hang on a damn minute, like, that's not right. And so, she took me to the doctor and they actually did the testing because they never did it back at birth. So once they did the testing, they were like, oh, like, you've actually got like moderate hearing loss.
So were you born with a hearing impairment?
No, from an infection.
From an ear infection?
Yeah.
And how do they know that the hearing impairment was from the result of having an ear infection if you weren't tested until later?
It's a bit hard. Like, it well and truly could have been something there at birth and they never did do the testing.
Yeah.
But obviously with that infection came like a lot of ugly stuff with it, and that's where the doctors were like, we think that that's where the issue is. I think it's hard to say though, because obviously when you're I suppose 0 to 4, you're talking, you're babbling and whatever, but it's not quite as clear as maybe what it would be when you're a bit older. So it's a bit hard to tell either way. Could be from birth, or it could have been from birth and then exasperated by an infection.
Yeah.
But yeah, not actually sure.
Do you remember much about growing up with a hearing impairment, and did you have much support around you in terms of maybe someone to help you out with the linguistics and the speech therapy? Did you have anything like that growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. I was really, really lucky. Even this is way before NDIS was invented. But I was really, really lucky that my speech was actually quite good and developing the way that it surprised a lot of my audiologists, because they were like, with this kind of hearing impairment and the way that it didn't happen until you were like 4 that we noticed, we're surprised that you do have such a good speech. But I actually in school had hearing teachers all the way up until I was in year 12.
Yeah.
So they would, come and take me out of class, a couple of times a week for like an hour and go over all the schoolwork one-on-one, because I did find in school with 30 other students in the class, you kind of struggle to hear sometimes what the teacher says or really interpret what they're trying to say to you through their teaching. So that was really, really good. Like, that level of support was awesome.
Think back to going through high school, not being able to hear as well as the kids in your class, but being able to read body language and other social cues. Do you think that's
100%.
given you a different edge throughout your life?
Absolutely. Like, I feel like I'm really in tune with body language, really in tune with like nonverbal cues, especially lip reading. Like, I can pick up on a lot more stuff than I feel like I give myself credit for, because I've had to rely on every other sense when my hearing was down. But yeah, I feel like I've learned quite a lot.
Imagine a life where you grew up without a disability. So you grew up with full hearing. How do you think that you would be different? This is something that I'm always thinking about with myself as well.
I think that I would be a lot less aware of people and what they're going through. Like, I think my hearing aids, like in the grand scheme of things, especially working with APM, me having hearing aids is so small compared to some of the other things that people are going through. But I think it's made me very, very aware of just, you may not know that someone's got hearing aids, or I've had a lot of employers say to me, oh, I'm not going to hire him because he's got hearing aids. Like, he'll actually, it's too much effort. And I'm like, oh, but I've got hearing aids. And I'm like, but look at me, I'm talking to you right now. And he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, exactly. Like, you're judging a book by its cover. You can't see my hearing aids. So I think it's made me a lot more definitely wanting to advocate for people, and just also being very aware of, you never know really what someone could be living with.
Absolutely. And I think every single person with a disability experiences that in one way or another. And you working in your role as a disability employment consultant and having a disability as well, you know what it's like for people just to not have a complete understanding and think that accommodating you into a particular environment might be too difficult, whereas, you and I can appreciate the superpowers that people with disabilities can have.
100%. 100%.
And going through the experience yourself where you have a disability, do you think that's translated into your role as a disability employment consultant at APM?
Absolutely. Like, I think even my role before APM, where I was a support worker, that gave me a lot of foundational skills to working with people with disabilities. But I suppose coming to APM and being able to work with people, and them coming in with no hope and being like, I've got this disability, no one's going to hire me, there's no use in hiring me, I can't do this, or I can't do this aspect of a job. And I'm like, if APM can hire me, and I'm deaf, like I'm proper deaf, and like, accommodate to me needing an iPhone instead of a Samsung because it connects to my hearing aids, I'm like, any workplace can. And I'm like, that's the beauty of what APM can do as well with like funding and stuff like that, is that we can be that gap to that barrier in employment as
Absolutely.
well. But yeah, like, I think that me having a disability really gave me the secure foundation to say, you know what, like, I'm in your corner. I've got a disability as well, although it may not be the same as yours. I've still dealt with the element of, no, too hard basket, we're not going to hire you, too much admin, can't really be bothered to deal with it, and fought against that.
So being an APM employment consultant, what does that entail? What does that mean to someone who's walking off the street and you say, I'm a disability employment consultant? What does that mean?
To me, it means not just I'm here to get you a job and like just put you in any old job. To me, it means working with you. It may be working through, you may not be ready for work straight away. So that might look at, you know, whether we need to put you a training, whether we need to look at teaching you interview skills. I have so many clients of mine that are like, I haven't been to an interview. Like, I used to just drop my resume in and I would start the next day. And I'm like, yeah, times have changed, bud. Like, yeah, times have changed. You need to apply on Seek now and wait like 15 working days for that. But yeah, like it's a lot of things that I do before employment to help someone get their confidence skills up to be able to attend an interview and make them feel like they're worthy of that job.
Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of that confidence, lack of confidence comes from, of not having work for a long time. You got to build that up a little bit.
And what's usually the expectation of people who are walking through the doors? Like, I know that I can only assume that people who are coming in for employment want to walk through the door and then walk out with a job the next day.
Yeah.
And so how do you manage the expectations there about how multifaceted employment can be and the journey to employment can be?
It is a bit of a hard one. I did have a client recently that was like, why can't I just get a job tomorrow? And I'm like, honestly, I wish I could get you a job tomorrow. But it's those little building blocks that you have to do to make someone right for the role and to make sure that, you know, they're not just right for the role, but their employer is right for them as well. Like, I don't want to put them into a job where they might be good at it for a month, but then their disability plays a barrier into their longevity of the role. So managing their expectations from the get-go, I'm like, look, it could look like next week you get into a job. It could look like 2 months. The main thing is that if I put in 100%, I want you to put in 100%. Like, I want you to match my energy. I was like, if you match my energy, I will go hard for you.
After you help people gain employment, do you also work with the employers as well and support the employers?
Absolutely. So we're honestly the middleman for a whole year, if even longer. Sometimes what a client can be telling you, the employer, like there's just that gap in that barrier in communication as well, and what the client's needs are, what the employer's needs are. So we really try and like focus on, we call it PPS, post-placement support. We really try and drum that in from the first week with clients and employers where possible, to make sure that we can keep in touch. Everyone's all on the same page and there's no like little miscommunication.
I can imagine that people coming in to seek employment, it can be a really scary time. You know, they're coming into a place where they're not really sure what their future is going to look like, how they're going to be treated, and have a lot of reservations with what the process is going to be like. So what does an average day look like for you if you see someone walking through who may seem a bit unsure and a bit nervous about the next steps in securing employment?
My biggest thing is that all the paperwork aside, when I first meet someone or every appointment I have with someone, put that away, have a face-to-face chat with them. Like, they're not going to trust you with all of their worries, concerns, their barriers, then you've got nothing to work with. My biggest thing is building that relationship first and foremost and saying, you know, do you mind letting me know what your concerns or reservations are? Like, is there anything holding you back from employment? And the stories I get are like wild, like, and nothing I could have ever imagined, but like the fact that they feel safe enough to let me know about that helps me help them better. And I think it helps them understand that like we're not just another person trying to get them into a cleaning job and skedaddle them out. I actually love seeing my clients get into a career that they love, and at the end of the day, keep them in that for as long as possible.
I'm really excited about what your future is going to look like. You know, being 25, so incredibly young and already so much life experience with your own lived experience of disability, but also some of the experiences that you've been through. I feel like APM's very lucky to have you.
Yeah, I'm lucky to have them. Like, I feel like it's been really good the last 2 years to step into a new role where it's allowed me to still have my weekends for myself. And that's so important in a job, to have something for yourself as well. And then be able to come here during the week and know that I'm making a difference in someone's life and being able to share my personal stories. A lot of people, I think, with disabilities, maybe coming off the street will be really quite hostile, and they'll be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you don't know what it's like to have a disability. And I'm like, but I do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I've experienced, you know, exclusion from a company or like not getting a job. Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I'm here to back you. Like, I will 100% back you. And knowing that I've got that faith in them, I'm like, we can do this.
I can understand why people can be hostile in that instance, because as a person with a disability, oftentimes you can always feel that people are making assumptions about what your ability is without even saying one single word to
Or
you, or asking one thing. And I think having a place like APM where they can come in, have a discussion with someone about what their choices are going to be like, is so empowering for them. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's interesting as well, because you get a lot of people that come from other providers that maybe aren't so disability focused, and they're like, you know, they just tried to throw me in a job, but I couldn't do the job. And I'm like, okay, let's break down why you couldn't do the job. And they're like, no, I actually physically could not do the job because of my disability. And I'm like, okay, well, that's like fair enough, like obviously. And then just listening to them and understanding what they're trying to tell you.
What's the experience been like to work for someone who has placed somebody with a disability into their workforce, and then working through that process with them over the next 12 months and seeing, I'm sure, the evolution and transformation of that workplace?
Yeah, it's been really good. Like, I have this one client that, I never had a relationship with this employer, and I rang them and did all the marketing side of things to get the client in. And this client was going through it. Like, I was like, I'm actually not sure if he's going to persevere through this employment, just because of everything outside as well. But with all the support that, like, we offered him outside, and then also workplace support, which was a new relationship that we had built with that employer. That employer actually rang us, I think 2 months ago, and he's been there for over 6 months now.
Yeah.
And said, we need more workers. We only want ones like the one you gave us.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's amazing. And like, he's just flourished there.
And how impactful for the person that has a disability as well to be in an environment where they are so appreciated and given a chance to flourish like they have. And it's something I see quite a lot, particularly with people who are placed into employment by APM, where they go into a workplace and not only does it positively change their lives, but it makes such a difference to even the organisational culture of the place where they've gone to for employment. And it's I'm always questioning, like, it's amazing that more people can't see this from the very beginning. And
it's really frustrating from where I sit sometimes with employers, where you first speak to them and you're like, look, I've got a client with a disability, like, this is what they need out of a workplace, this is their barriers. And it sounds so bad, but like, as soon as you mention disability, they assume the worst. And I'm like, you don't even consider mental health, like, that is considered a disability. And the best part of my job is breaking down that barrier.
Yeah.
And just watching the employer go, oh, like, okay, like, you know, we can work with this. Like, we've got the skills and the resources from you guys that we need to help this client. It's not as scary as what we thought it was.
I think there's something in that where, like, a lot of people simply think of output as a measure of success in the business. Whereas, like, in the Paralympic space, for example, you know, athletes with disability, they're high-performing athletes, but Paralympics speaks to so much more than just what sport is. Yeah. And I think the same thing happens in our communities and happens in the workplace as well. And so I think that's why, in my opinion, when a person with a disability is placed in the workforce, people see so many other benefits that come from it. Yeah. And I think it really opens their whole minds and their whole worlds to the possibilities of
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. I think even just something small as hearing aids, like, just even in my office, like, so many of my friends are like, all my colleagues are like, oh my God, like, you know, they were able to do that for you, like, that's awesome. And I'm like, yeah, but like, it's kind of a bare minimum, isn't it? Like, just because we've got a disability, like, I can do my job to the full extent that everyone else can, just with a little modification.
Yeah.
Like,
and you're also bringing in a whole bunch of life experience that other people don't have as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's
connect on a deeper level.
Yeah, I think, and you've been doing that in your role as a disability employment consultant.
Yeah.
So, and we're very lucky to have you, but thank you so much for sharing your story. It was amazing to hear your insights, and I absolutely love the discussion, and I'm sure the others will too, and keep making a difference, because you're doing incredible work.
I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing where APM takes me.